CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Li Jianhua. Our top stories this hour. Donald Trump facing 13 new charges, including racketeering and election meddling, over his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 U.S. election results. And the death toll from Hawaii's worst ever disaster rises to 99 people. Survivors began to grapple with the scale of the devastation. Weeks of flooding in northern China leaves more than 300,000 hectares of crops underwater, leaving many farmers in limbo. An explosion at a fuel station in southern Russia kills 35 people and leaves over 100 injured. Well, Donald Trump says he is the victim of a political witch hunt after he was indicted for the fourth time in nearly 5 months. A court in Georgia has charged the former U.S. president and 18 co-defendants with trying to illegally change the 2020 election results. Trump, who denies any wrongdoing, faces 13 criminal counts, including racketeering and election meddling. Now let's talk to our correspondent John Terrett in New York. John, all of this happening faster than expected.
Yes, Chanwa, when I was with you on yesterday's program, we fully expected this to play out over 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. In the end, they got the work done far quicker than we thought. No idea why that was. It's the court's prerogative to do things quicker if they wish to, and they did. But what they did do, the court was supposed to close at 5 p.m. down in Georgia and Atlanta last night, and they kept working till about 9 p.m. And at one point, the judge who's going to oversee this part of the case sort of said, well, I'll give it another hour. If you haven't finished in an hour, I'm going home. Well, in the end, they did get it all done. And what they did was they brought up witnesses that had been asked to testify on Tuesday to late on Monday, including Jeffrey Duncan, who is the former lieutenant governor of the state of Georgia, and a journalist who was the last witness, who was sitting in the anteroom waiting to go in and was busy tweeting the whole time, which is how we know all of this. Then there was a late-night presser by Fani Willis, who is the district attorney, and my understanding is that she wants to try all 19 of these defendants in one go in one court. I'm also told that, unlike in the other cases, there will be a mugshot for former President Trump here, and I'm also told it will be on TV. So just to clarify, I have it down as President Trump plus 18 others, 41 indictments in total handed down by the grand jury, and 91 charges overall. Fani Willis, in a news conference last night, laid out all her evidence before the grand jury, who voted in favor of the indictments. But in the news conference, it was clear that this goes back, in her view, to October of 2020, about a month before the actual vote, when there was an email which she presented as evidence to the grand jury, suggesting that the Trump Organization would say they'd won the election, even if they knew they didn't. Now the 19 people, 18 plus President Trump, have until a week on Friday, which is the 25th. This Friday is the 18th, then the 25th. They've got till the 25th to hand themselves in to surrender. And as you say, President Trump himself is facing 13 individual charges in this case.
Well, John, tell us about the others indicted or indicated, as Trump misspelled this morning.
Most of them you don't know. Okay, we know them here because they're in the news a lot, but for international audiences, most of them are not known, but two of them are. One of them is Mark Meadows, who is the former chief of staff in the latter stages of the Trump presidency. Now, within Washington, D.C., that is the most coveted of all the jobs. If you are the chief of staff to the president, nobody gets to the president without your say-so. You're basically the diary keeper for the president of the United States. It is, within Washington circles, if you're the chief of staff, you are a political star. So Mark Meadows is one of the indicted. And the other one, you will know, is Rudy Giuliani, who 22 years ago here in 2001 became a national hero when he was the mayor of New York when the attacks happened here at Ground Zero and at the Pentagon and in Shanksville as well. Now, Giuliani is also known for facing down the mob and the mafia by moving adult stores, adult entertainment stores and clubs and things away from Times Square, a couple of blocks away, cleaning Times Square up and making it a much more pleasant place for tourists to go, which it still is today. And how ironic that his own anti-racketeering laws that he brought in this city, he's famous for it, are now being used against him 22 years later, because the overarching charge here is Racketeer, Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, which is well known within the legal community as RICO. There's a federal version, other states have their versions. Obviously, this version is in the state of Georgia. So now, finally, it appears to me that we have President Trump appearing in court in January, February, March and May of next year, right in the heart of the presidential election campaign, for which he's still the front runner. President Trump on Truth Social today calling this a witch hunt and a politically inspired indictment. Chen Hua?
Well, thanks, John. That is our correspondent, John Terrett, in New York. Well, the death toll from Hawaii's worst natural disaster has risen to 99 people. Search teams with specially trained dogs have so far only got through 25% of the disaster zone in Lahaina. Authorities hope to get through up to 90% of the disaster zone by the weekend. Hundreds of people remain missing. Where residents of Lahaina are now gradually returning to the charred remains of what used to be home. Amidst the pain, some shared their stories with CGTN's Nisa Soledad Paris.
I'd say it's going to take years to rebuild and to come back to.
Pila Taufa was born and raised in the historic town of Lahaina, the former empire of the Hawaiian kingdom, a kingdom reduced to ruins and tales of horror.
Just seeing dead bodies on the rocks on the beach, bodies in the car. There was a kid underneath a car on Front Street. Looked like his dad was trying to protect him, but they just was burnt. Pets, cats, dogs, just all burnt right in the middle of the road. And then before the fire even got to this side, there were people running towards our house. Like their hair looked like it just got burned, their face was all black. And then there's just all just sweat running towards us.
The wildfires of Lahaina left a plume of death. The Lahaina blaze became the deadliest in modern American history. Dozens died, and so many others are missing. Pila lost part of his family.
I got an auntie and an uncle, a family of 4. Their daughter and their grandson, 7 years old, they were caught in the fire down there. They were trying to get away, but they were in the car. I guess the telephone just fell in their car and they just stuck inside. They got burned.
We were called for rebuilding.
He survived.
Yeah.
I, like so many others, wonder why there were no fire alerts or warnings from authorities. Officials have restricted access to Lahaina, while rescue teams continue to search for fire victims.
We were finally able to enter the town of Lahaina, where we're witnessing its utter devastation, and residents keep saying that it will take years before they can fully rebuild.
It's our home. We've lived here 30 years. Our kids were born here. We just don't know the next steps.
It was this family's first time back after running away from the flames in their cars.
It's like a bomb went off. It's the end of all of it. It's gone. It's gone. It's so weird.
It's hard to think, Jennifer said. As for the future,
We're just camping it out over here, like just waiting for them to give us the okay to go back in and help clean up, just do whatever we can.
after losing almost everything, they dream of a rebirth from the ashes. Nitza Soledad Perez, CGTN, Maui.
Well, people in North China's Hebei province are coping with the aftermath of record-breaking floods. Agriculture has taken a huge hit. Local officials say more than 300,000 hectares of crops have been damaged. CGTN's Chen Mengfei reports.
Water is still knee-deep in parts of low-lying farmland in Hebei's Xian County. In scorching heat, farmer Zhang Wenqing is busy making the outlet for the floodwater.
Look at my perspiration. I'm 70 years old, and I'm here to dig out an opening.
Zhang's trying to dry his land in time to plant wheat in a month. He's already lost all the corn he planted.
Soaking in water this deep, with such high temperatures these days, they are all ruined.
Zhang estimates his loss to be about 40,000 renminbi, more than $5,000.
I want to cry, but I have no tears. What can I do?
Zhang's farmland is located in Xian County's flood storage area, one of the 7 flood control zones activated during the recent flood that hit Hebei and Beijing. According to China's flood control laws, crops damaged in such areas shall be compensated at 50 to 70% of the average value of the previous 3 years. Zhang says he has not been told about his compensation, but the government has collected data on his loss. At a nearby village office, government workers are aggregating the information.
昨天的挖的面现场丈量，用尺子给这么量，人面每家每户长度宽度跟上水的这个亩数，很多的人。
Many people lost 70 to 80% of their incomes, and most people lost more than half.
Village official Liu says the previous time floods caused so much crop damage was in 1996. Images from that devastating event remind people of the area's long history battling floods at the county museum. Situated at the intersection of Hutuo and Fuyang rivers, Xian County was made into a flood storage area a few centuries ago during the Qing dynasty. Thanks to modern flood infrastructures, damage is now much more controlled. But by design, many farmlands in the region will be flooded again in extreme scenarios if necessary. I asked farmer Zhang how he sees that possibility.
I was born here, so I'll just have to try to survive here.
To make ends meet, Zhang has a second job as a security guard. He says if more assistance can be given, it will be helpful. Chen Mengfei, CGTN, from Xian County in Hebei Province.
A landslide at the Jade Mine in the remote region of northern Myanmar has killed at least 36 people and injured 8 others. More than 100 rescue workers have been deployed to search for survivors. Myanmar is the world's largest producer of jade, most of which is exported to China. In Japan, nearly 250,000 people have been ordered to move to safety after Typhoon Lan crossed the main island of Honshu, not far from the ancient capital Kyoto. Authorities issued flood and landslide warnings, though Lan has been downgraded to a tropical storm. 2 people were injured, 1 seriously. Chris Gilbert has more.
Well, Cyclone Lan crashed into central Japan on Tuesday, bringing gale-force winds and torrential rain. Forecasters had expected a month's worth of rain in just 24 hours, but some areas, in fact, saw 3 times that amount. The deluge is swelling rivers to bursting point, particularly in Kyoto, where the rivers swept away pedestrian bridges, burst their banks, and the floodwaters entered people's homes. Residents using buckets to clear the waters from their entranceways and living rooms, some saying they'd never seen anything like it in the 60 years that they'd lived in the city. The rains are now heading towards western Japan into Wednesday. Authorities are urging people to stay vigilant and stay inside, not to venture out unless it's absolutely necessary. 20 people have already been injured in the gale force winds. A 60-year-old man is unconscious and thought to be in a serious condition after he was hit by flying debris near his home in Wakayama. And even though the typhoon has been downgraded to a severe tropical storm, authorities are urging vigilance as it heads towards Japan's northern island of Hokkaido later in the week. Chris Gilbert for CGTN in Tokyo.
The death toll from landslides in northern India has risen to 57, with many more still missing. Rescue workers are combing through the rubble of a temple which collapsed after torrential rain triggered a landslide in the Shima district over the weekend. The severity of increasing flooding and landslides in the region is blamed on climate change. The European Union has denied reports that it is not open to a deal with the UK on returning people who crossed the English Channel. The UK government is anxious to secure a returns agreement with the EU after making the policy a key plank of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's domestic agenda, which allows Britain to return people to European countries where they first claimed asylum. 6 people died when attempting to cross the channel over the weekend. Police in the UK have confirmed that they have charged the 3 Bulgarian nationals suspected of spying for Russia. The woman and 2 men were arrested in February after a major investigation by the intelligence agencies. They are accused of holding false identity documents with improper intention. A further 2 people have been released on bail. You're watching CGTN, still ahead. We are in Slovakia to find out why its tourism sector is getting a boost from rising prices across the Mediterranean.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliette Mann.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us, excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Donald Trump facing 13 new charges, including racketeering and election meddling, over his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 U.S. election results. And the death toll from Hawaii's worst ever disaster rises to 99 people. Survivors began to grapple with the scale of the devastation. Weeks of flooding in northern China left more than 300,000 hectares of crops underwater, leaving many farmers in limbo. At least 35 people were killed in an explosion at a fuel station in the Russian-controlled Republic of Dagestan. The blast occurred after a fire broke out in a car repair shop on the outskirts of the capital, Makhachkula. The flames spread to nearby gas pumps. Children are reported to be among the dead, with over 100 people injured. Now let's talk to our correspondent Dasha Cherneshova in Moscow. So Dasha, an investigation has been launched, but what more do we know about this explosion? What exactly has happened?
Well, that's right. It is called as an emergency situation or tragedy here in Russia. We understand that an explosion first took place at a car shop on the outskirts of Makhachkala. This is the capital of the Dagestan Republic. That was not in the city center, so that saved the situation partially. But an explosion happened, and then the fire has started at this car shop, and that it is spreading to the petrol station. So this is where the fuel tankers have exploded, leading to major casualties. We understand that at the moment the death toll is 35 people, including 3 children. 115 people have also been injured after this tragedy has taken place, and we have seen the tremendous pictures of people rushing to hospitals. We understand that some of the patients will be taken and airlifted to the Russian capital, Moscow, should that be required and possible given their conditions. Now we understand that the fire has spread to the area of 600 100 square meters. It has been later extinguished, but certainly the authorities in Dagestan are now investigating what has led to such devastating consequences. Speaking about the reasons, the head of the region, Malikov, has said today that one of the possible causes of this fire in Makhachkala was actually the greed of the owners who have put their own interests and benefit above the security norms, and that's why the car repair shop has been so close to the petrol station.
Dasha, on a slightly different note, China's Defense Minister Li Shangfu is in Moscow for meetings with top military figures.
Well, that's right. Moscow is holding its security conference, and there is a number of international attendees of this major event for the Russian Federation, and Li Shangfu is one of those people who is attending this event. Today we have seen a number of speeches being made by the Russian officials as well as by the Chinese defense minister. We have heard him saying that the idea to bolster cooperation even in the security and military area between Moscow and Beijing is part of the no limits partnership between these two countries. We have heard that the countries are ready for that. We also have heard that these two countries say their partnership is not targeted against the third country. So a number of comments has been made during this conference with the Russian President Vladimir Putin saying that the future contours of the new multipolar world have to be set up at the moment. He was also talking a lot about the course of the Russian special military operation with Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, stressing that the Russian Federation has so far been refraining from the use of cluster munitions, but will possibly reconsider this decision given the decision of the United States to supply Ukraine with this type of weapons. So certainly we have been hearing a lot during these meetings, and also we understand that Li Shangfu has had a meeting with the Russian Defense Minister, and the cooperation between the two countries has been discussed and how to beef up those ties. We also have noted that they have had the meetings this year privately 3 times already. This is something unseen for the two countries. The level has been beefed up unprecedentedly already.
Thanks, Dasha. That is our correspondent, Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. Exactly 78 years ago, Japan unconditionally surrendered, finally bringing an end to World War II. Every year on this day, commemorative events are held across China to remember the victims. CGTN's Huang Yue has more.
After an 8-kilometer hike, a group of over 400 students and teachers from Beijing No. 12 High School successfully reached the square of the Museum of the War of the Chinese People's Resistance against Japanese aggression. The students recited a letter written by Zhao Yiman, a revered figure in China known for her courageous role as a female fighter during the struggle against Japanese invasion. The contents of the letter, penned in 1936 just before her tragic demise at the hands of the Japanese army, were a heartfelt farewell to her son. In the letter, she conveyed her sense of sacrifice for the nation and commitment to its cause. During the event, the museum gifted the students with a flag symbolizing the volunteer team, welcoming them as guides within the premises.
I'm honored to take the flag on behalf of all the students. After finishing the training sessions provided by the museum, we will become volunteer guides and tell this history to more visitors.
The 8-kilometer hike wasn't easy, but it's taught me to embrace challenges like our predecessors. Coming to the museum and seeing the exhibition has made me cherish the hard-won peace even more.
Established in 1987, the Museum of the War of the Chinese People's Resistance against Japanese aggression welcomes visitors with no admission fee, and it's long been a popular spot among tourists. The museum's curator says the many challenges facing today's world give the institution added significance, highlighting the crucial role of younger generations in upholding historical memory as they guide the world towards a better future.
We hope students can learn how the martyrs fought for our nation's independence and freedom. Young students should carry on the spirit, study hard, and make their own contributions to the development of our nation and the peace for all mankind.
Located near the Marco Polo Bridge or the Lugo Bridge, where the invasion by the Japanese started in 1937, the museum is now an important education base in China for people to learn the history. This year, the museum is holding more commemorative activities such as orchestra performances, recitals, and photo exhibitions. CGTN, Beijing.
As the summer tourism season hits its peak across Europe, the cost of living is having a big impact. With the traditional Mediterranean vacation now unaffordable for many, tourists are traveling elsewhere for their summer break. One of the countries that have benefited from this is Slovakia, with many resorts reopening to cope with the extra demand. Our correspondent Alyosha Milankovic has more.
An aqua park in the town of Poprad is fully packed with visitors. Located on the foothills of the High Tatra Mountains, on a busy day, it accommodates up to 5,000 people. Most of them came from neighboring Poland and Hungary.
The situation with the inflation and the war and everything, like the economic situation, has raised the prices all over Europe, not only in the popular destinations. So everybody's like thinking to find maybe more affordable holiday, which in High Tatras it is.
The tourists here say that inflation has pushed the costs of vacation in the popular ski resorts on the Adriatic coast to new heights. So staying closer to home for many became a cost-effective option. And the Tatra Mountains have something to offer them.
It is almost 1,000 kilometers away from the nearest seaside resort and more than 1,100 meters above the sea level. Yet thousands are drawn here to the natural beauty, the tourism programs, and perhaps above all, far lower prices.
During the winter, this hilltop is full of skiers. But these days, they are replaced by hikers and tourists who want something different, including a festival celebrating the local culture.
I think that Slovakia belongs to the value for money category. It's very attractive, even in these economically difficult times in Europe, which suffers from over-tourism. And all cities, especially the smaller ones, are overcrowded. Our country can offer peace and security.
Local hotels expect this year's numbers to surpass the pre-pandemic record season of 2019. So far, it seems that inflation rates and the rising costs of living work in their favor as more tourists choose mountains and aquaparks over sunsets and ski resorts. Alyosha Milankovic, CGTN, High Tatra Mountains.
Spain have reached their first Women's World Cup final after a dramatic last few minutes in their game against Sweden. Selma Parra-Yuelo appeared to have given Spain the victory when she scored with 9 minutes remaining. But with the clock ticking down, Sweden then equalized in the 88th minute, and the game looked set for extra time, only for Spain to make it 2-1. Just a minute later, through their captain Olga Carmona, Spain will play either England or co-host Australia in Sunday's final. But excitement about the women's national team known as the Matildas has reached a fever pitch in Australia, where even the koala bears are showing their support. A koala who was given the name Matilda just before the term's crucial win against Canada in the group stage has been a lucky charm so far. She was given the tough task of predicting Australia or England to win on Wednesday, but she didn't even have to think, heading straight over to the green and gold scarf of her homeland. And we'll find out tomorrow, of course. The headlines again. Donald Trump facing 13 new charges, including racketeering and election meddling, over his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 U.S. election results. And the death toll from Hawaii's worst ever disaster rises to 99 people. Survivors begin to grapple with the scale of the devastation. Weeks of flooding in northern China leave more than 300,000 hectares of crops underwater, leaving many farmers in limbo. And that is the World Today. Thanks for watching. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next is the World Insight with Tian Wei. For now, from all the team in London, that's goodbye.